Good afternoon. My name is Alun R, and this afternoon in the UK, at least, I'm facilitating a game of Achtung, Cthulhu Dark. This is a game based on the idea of British agents operating in occupied Europe just before the outbreak of World War II. The difference is that in this 1939, the supernatural, occult, and mythos, Cthulhu mythos, is real. This is being run as part of the Guantlet RPG community. If you don't know about the Gauntlet, then you really should look us up at Guantlet-RPG.com. And you'll find lots of opportunities to talk about games and also play with some really great players like the ones I have below. I'll do the full description I'll do the initial description of what we're about, and then I'll ask the players to introduce themselves and their characters. So yes, so this is set in 1939, the summer of 1939. In this 1939, as I say, the mythos, the Cthulhu mythos, is real. And these sessions, this is the first of 4. These sessions will be scaffolded by the scenario Three Kings, written by Sarah Newton for the Achtung Cthulhu rules, published by Modiphius. However, we'll be using the Cthulhu Dark rules by Graham Walmsley to run these games. They've been slightly modified to reflect the wartime setting, and some of those tweaks have helped me frame some of the ways in which characters in this kind of setting might be able to stay sane and competent in the face of not just the stress of the Cthulhu mythos, but also the stress of being undercover behind enemy lines. And those tweaks owe a great deal to the stress relief moves in Mark Diaz Truman's Cartel Quickstart, published by Magpie Games. That is a great game. You should try it, certainly. So I won't say any more about the game. I'll just ask now the players to introduce themselves. Can we do that in character keeper order, please? So as I say, I'm Alun R, he, him. So if each of you could describe yourself, introduce yourself, perhaps say how long you've been playing with the Gauntlet, I don't know, and then tell us about your character, please. So I think I said I'd go in reverse order. So that means, Eduardo, can we start with you?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm playing Joseph Joe Wachowski. He's a he, him. His wartime role is the careful courier. Basically, he's envoy skilled in negotiating and maintaining lines of communication with the Allies. His more specifically skilled in bargaining, tradecraft, and psychology, and some experience, I guess, with small arms or hand-to-hand combat. What did he do before the war? He was a former lawyer. I imagine him kind of like maybe like a public defender in New York, or maybe even Chicago might be more appropriate. But he's now serving in the diplomatic corps of the U.S. Ambassador's office to Poland. The ambassador at the time was Anthony Biddle Jr., and I just kind of imagined that Ambassador Biddle would probably have sent Joe to just sort of look, I've heard about this operation. Why don't you observe and report back, but don't get involved. But needless to say, Joe can't help but get involved. But we'll see how that turns out.
And do you want to describe Joe for us? How do others see him?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I kind of imagined like a Cary Grant, sort of like this smoldering, handsome look, unlike me with, thick black hair and, this really charming style.
Interestingly, I think there's a picture of Gregory Peck in the image board.
Was that Gregory Peck? I'm so sorry, I got the two mixed up, but yeah. Thank you.
So then moving along, Sabine, you're joining us for this session for character generation. So introduce yourself and then tell us about Adam Gasco.
Yeah, I am Sabine. I use any pronouns, and I've been with the Gauntlet, I think, for over a year now, or maybe longer. I don't know. I get confused. Time is weird. I'm playing Adam Gasco. Adam Gasco is a Czech nationalist. A Czech national. He has been living in Prague for for all his life, and he was kind of a person about town. That's what he says. He was a criminal. That's what other people would say. But he has a cousin in the government in exile, and he is good at fiddling around with tech stuff, radios and such like. And so he kind of became the person to keep in contact with the government in exile, and suddenly he's part of an underground movement, and he thinks that might be a good thing. Actually, he's not a tall person, or like smallish, but sleazy. He talks a lot. And I forgot the name of the actor that I have in mind. It's kind of a smaller guy, compact, with not a lot of hair. American guy. Looks Italian, maybe, but I find a picture. I'm not in this week, so I have 1 week to find a picture.
You will have time to illustrate your character. Thank you. Jasmine, tell us about yourself and tell us about Lenka.
Yep, Jasmine, pronouns she, her. I've been for the Gauntlet a while. I'm not sure if I played my first game with them before there was a Gauntlet Hangouts, but yeah, I've been here a lot. And yeah, I'm playing Lenka Havlicek. She's Czech national also. She's daughter of diplomats, has some contacts in London, and now that the country's being taken over by the Nazis, she had to join the fight somehow, and she's doing so by becoming like a secret agent, a liaison to the British, who are somewhat sympathetic to her cause, and doing secret agent stuff. She hasn't been at this too long. She's quite young, but she's talented in tradecraft and things like that, and has been learning quickly. Her description: she's a young woman, rather gaunt. She's wearing glasses, dark hair, in a that's in a haircut that's that can be easily modified. Like it's longish, and she can do different hairdos with it quickly, which is helpful in situations like this. At the same time, she's wearing a practical coat and a very presentable but not super expensive dress underneath, so she can change that as well. And probably is carrying something like a switchblade or razor or something to defend herself. And yeah, she's middle size and not the strongest person.
That's great. Thank you for that. Rolling on to a very different kind of character, Paul, would you like to introduce yourself and Adrian?
Hello, I'm Paul R, he, him. I've not been with the Gauntlet too long. The character I'm playing today and for the next few sessions is Adrian Carton Devart. He is quite an old gentleman, a war veteran of many years, serving in both the Boer War, Somali campaigns, and World War One. He's a foul-mouthed, well-decorated Belgique national originally. And I'm fond of telling people that, frankly, I enjoy war. What does he look like? Classically well-dressed English gent, slicked back hair, and he actually has an eye patch because he lost an eye in the Somali campaigns when he took 2 bullets to the face.
So he won't stand out in a crowd at all then. Right, so that's Adrian. And then finally, Walter, introduce yourself and tell us about Ben.
Hi, I'm Walter, he, him. I've been playing with the Gauntlet for about a year, and I am playing Ben Hart. Ben Hart is a tough NCO. He's 29, joined the British Army early on after getting away from his family's dairy farm in Devon. Since then, he's served in some police actions in Palestine and Suez, and in that time, he's just proven himself to be very reliable, very dependent, and that's how people see him. For describe yourself as others see you, I have reliable, tough, laconic.
Just as a tough NCO should be. Okay, now, so with character creation done, Sabine, I don't know if you want to kind of drop out now, or whether you want to kind of see the setup. It might be helpful, actually, if you saw the setup. Is that okay?
That's totally okay. I'm free for the afternoon, so.
Okay, so let me run through my CATS document then. I've already outlined the concept of behind enemy lines, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of the more detailed aim, it's the summer of 1939. Britain is not yet at war with Nazi Germany, but Czechoslovakia has been invaded by the Third Reich. The Czech government in exile in London has told British intelligence that the Czech resistance has information about Nazi atrocities. These are reported to have been committed by the Alun R, an arm of the SS formed from scholars in a variety of disciplines, but including a number of cranks claiming to be occultists. The mission, really, is to collaborate between a drop party being dropped into Czechoslovakia by parachute and agents on the ground to obtain first-hand evidence of those supposed atrocities that can be got back to London as potential propaganda, because everyone is certain that war will certainly start soon. The Alun R is a branch of the SS. It did exist, but I'll come to that in terms of tone. So in terms of tone, we have Nazis, Cthulhu, the occult, the supernatural. So this game is intended to be rich in darkness and foreboding. How dark may depend on how the players approach the game. But this isn't really intended to be pulp. You know, while we may end up getting somewhere close, this isn't intended to be Indiana Jones. Now, as in any game based on Call of Cthulhu, it's fair to say that the longer-term fate of the characters is pretty bleak, and Cthulhu Dark is no more forgiving in that direction. So the characters may begin to suffer the stress of war and the mythos quite significantly, and we'll intend to deal with that relatively sensitively. Now, subject matter. This scenario involves the disappearances of innocent people, including children, the occult activity of our fictionalized Third Reich. Now, the activities of the real Nazi regime that took over Germany in the 1930s are well known, and by fictionalizing them and adding aspects of the occult and supernatural to the mix, when I'm certainly not seeking to trivialize them. And so we will treat the material seriously and with some respect. Given the nature of the material, though, I'm going to be careful to use the safety tools espoused by the Gauntlet community. That will include the X card. The X card, if any of the players, if any of you are feeling uncomfortable in a bad way, then please play the X card. To be honest, my capacity to focus on you and the chat is limited. So the simplest way to get to play the X card is just make the X card in front of you. I'll pick that up because I'll be looking at you through most of this. If you play the X card, I won't ask you why you've played it. If something comes up and then later on you think, actually, I really am not comfortable with that, then play the X card retrospectively. That's fine. I won't ask why. I may ask you how far you want me to rewind the action so I can get back before the bit that disturbs you and play forward in that from there in hopefully a way that works for you. So the X card will be in place. We'll also be running an open table. So if during the game you need to just get up and break for a moment, If you can put something in the chat to say you'll be back, fine. But if if you go away, if stuff happens, if life gets in the way and you have to go away, don't worry. That's fine. If you can come back later, great. And then finally, we will be playing with lines and veils. Now, the lines are the things the lines we will not cross in the fiction. They won't appear on screen. However, given the darkness inherent in this setting, lines are perhaps more difficult to define precisely than in many other Gauntlet games. However, my starting point is that we will not see graphic representation of Nazi atrocities. We may, though, see some of the consequences of those or some of their after effects. We'll not see sexual violence or violence against children. Again, we may see some after effects, but we will not be exploring those themes in any detail. Now, I'll ask my players, are there any other lines that you'd want to include? And if so, you'll find a tab in the character keeper for lines and veils. Can you add them in, please? And while you're thinking about lines, I'll talk about veils. Veils are those things that may occur in the fiction, but we won't be describing them. We'll fade to black or whatever. And the starting point, because I'm old and British, is sex. Sex may happen in the game, but it'll be behind a curtain. We won't be describing any of the detail. And similarly, torture. Torture may happen, given the nature of the setting, but this will be behind a closed door or off screen. And if there are any other veils that you'd like to have, please add those to the character keeper as well. So no graphic representation of Nazi atrocities, no sexual violence or violence against children or animals. Sorry, I meant to add animals. And sex and torture will be veiled. So any more add to that? Otherwise, that's what I'll assume we're playing with. Okay. So with that, let us get on to starting the game. For the convenience of the setup, you'll be split into two groups. There'll be a land party, i.e. those already in Czechoslovakia, and there'll be an air party made up of those Brits being dropped into Czechoslovakia entirely illegally, given that war has not been declared. So the air party will be Adrian and Ben, and on the ground will be Joe, Adam, and Lenka. Now, Adam won't be part of this setup because Adam will be introduced as a character in the next session, but Sabine will continue to stay with us while we just describe the setup. So let me describe circumstances and begin to ask you some questions as you go along. I'm deliberately not going to ask you which member of the team you're currently fond of or not fond of, because you're not yet a unit, and I'm going to wait until you get to know each other before I ask that question. But I am going to ask you another key question, which is why you got into the secret war. Now, in the character keeper, you will find a drop-down box that says, why did you join the secret war? And when you select one of those, it'll tell you what that means. And then it'll ask you another question. So I see that Adrian has already selected a box. Adrian, tell us, why did you join the secret war?
Because I believe strongly in God, King, and country. And so if it is the will of my country, I will do it. And what would make me betray that would be if Britain was to lower its standards.
How would that, so just expand on that. How would that apply on a mission?
Lowering its standards. Yeah, that means sort of jumping in bed with another nation, basically.
So do I imply really that you distrust any non-Britons?
I've served a lot with them, but clearly I do view them as less than British. Yes,
Because God is British, obviously.
of course.
So okay, so can we be a bit more specific then? That it's not just about lowering standards; it's about Britain taking orders from other people. Because in a mission, that seems to me to be a way to apply that. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Ben, I notice you've made a selection. So tell me why you joined the Secret War, Ben.
Ben is Ben is just has trouble getting motivated by much of anything. I mean, motivated like really deeply caring. Like Ben is dedicated to being in the army, but he just doesn't see a future for himself doing anything in particular, and he's looking for maybe something a little bit bigger and more interesting than what he's been doing. So yeah, he's like, okay, this war, this is the biggest thing going on right now. Maybe there's some meaning in this.
So I imagine him having perhaps spent a couple of years in the UK on garrison duty, perhaps training squaddies, and bored out of his mind. So when the request comes, a request for a volunteer for an inverted commas dangerous mission, presumably he leaps at the opportunity because it might at least be interesting.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so if he's so kind of bored by life, what actually scares the shit out of him?
I think that I think he's got some things that he feels like he has to hide. I'm gonna say I think there's probably more to it than this, but I'm gonna say, just to anchor it on something, that he's homosexual and feels like there's like no place for him for a family. He doesn't want like a regular family. He just feels like he doesn't fit into society, and he's afraid that people will find that out, that he just doesn't fit in.
Okay, so exposure of his homosexuality.
Yeah.
Okay, then can you put that in the character keeper, please, as an aid memoir for me? Lenka. Why did Lenka join the Secret War?
Well, she saw the atrocities the Nazis were already doing, and she listened to to what they were saying. So she knows what they intend to do to people in the world. So she cannot stand for that, and has to fight back against it.
That, I mean, because the picture you've painted is of a young woman, a student activist.
Yeah.
Is so there's a degree of idealism in her. I'm reading.
Indeed.
Fine. And so the question for you then, what would you do to stop them?
Well, she's resolved to do whatever is necessary. She lying, obviously. She's an agent, stealing stuff. Yeah, that also. She expects that she will have to kill someone sooner or later, and thinks that she will be okay with this, not like content or happy about the prospect of taking a life, but she is convinced that is how far she will go.
Now, given that you're not in next week, do you have a view of how you would like Lenka to finish today's session? Alive or dead? Martyr or heroine?
I'm let's see where the game takes us. I'm okay. I'm okay with a Cthulhu character dying, but I'm also okay with her surviving. But
Fine. I just wanted to put that on the table. So when you begin to get a feel for where you want to go, lean into it, and I'll try to help you get there. So we've got some kind of completeness for you.
yeah.
Joe, tell me, how on earth did Joe get into this?
I imagine that first information starts to leak over to the ambassador's office. Just sort of things that they're hearing about from across the border, and then once those become confirmed, it's sort of like it sinks in. That this is more than just a military engagement or a military issue, and so. Similar to Lenka, humanity. It's once you found out what they were doing, you just couldn't turn aside from your duty. And I think in this case, it's like a moral duty, right? And then what would Joe do to stop them? It's very similar to Lenka. Compromise, sacrifice, personal code of morality. Willing to do things that you wouldn't do normally.
Right, because you've written there, normally Joe would seek to do no harm. In this context, he'd be prepared to do some harm.
Yeah, digging into his history as a public defender, there's always got to be a way, you know what I mean? There's always some sort of deal or compromise or bargain to be cut, or, you know what I mean? Everything is worth saving. And so, yeah.
Okay, that works fine. And finally, Sabine, I appreciate that you might want to think longer about this, but at this point, why did Adam get into the secret war?
Because it's a secret, right? You have to know it. I mean, he's a cryptography and he's learned lots of languages. He wants to know stuff.
And does that stuff extend towards, I think in the rules I've described as the blasphemous unknown?
What is blasphemy? Really? I mean, come on, it's just, you'd have to know it before you could actually make a judgment about it. If it's blasphemous, of course you wouldn't like to know it, but you couldn't judge it without knowing it. It's a conundrum, really.
Okay. And what would you give up to know more?
Yeah, I would give up my personal safety. So I would sneak in and take risks, and I would maybe even, if it really was kind of damaging to my psyche, I would probably assume that it wouldn't, because I'd have to know before, But what he wouldn't give up was, at least at that point, was other people. That's not something he was willing to give up.
So he's prepared to put himself in harm's way.
Yeah.
But not necessarily to risk other people.
Yes,
exactly. Can you flesh out that, what you would give up to know more? That would be helpful to me. And then I think we'll bid you farewell. Mm-hmm. And I'll brief the others. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, and until next week, and have fun, everybody. Bye-bye. Okay, so we've got the air party, we've got the land party. Air, Adrian and Ben. Land, Joe, Adam and Lenka. The parachute drop goes really well, which is good news. And Adrian, Ben, what do you do with the parachutes when you land in the dead of dark outside Prague?
Bury them.
Mm-hmm. Cut them up, bury them.
Okay. And as you look around for landmarks, try to just orientate yourself, because it went much easier than training, actually. You remember the briefing. A grey-haired captain. Well done for volunteering, chaps. It's the kind of thing we'll need if this show gets rolling properly. Very much the spirit we're looking for if this turns into a shooting war. And Colonel, I'm very grateful to see an experienced hand able to help us out with this. Of course, it is all terribly secret. You do appreciate we are not at war with Germany, nor are we technically we have no involvement in the occupation of Czechoslovakia. So I have to tell you that be careful. We will be dropping you on the edge of a forest. Once you're in country, remember that the Nazis have decided to split the country into Bohemia and Moravia. If you start talking about Czechoslovakia, you will attract attention to yourselves. Your code name will be Broadsword. We here in London will be codenamed Danny Boy when you need to establish contact. We cut to the land party. What I'm assuming is that Joe has been invited to dinner by perhaps an opposite number at the British Embassy in Prague, Czechoslovakia. Because there's been an exchange of letters between your ambassadors, you've been whipped over here very quickly because the ambassador has not had very much notice. You may be here on a liaison, but part of that liaison was to establish, begin to build bridges between what these nascent intelligent organizations may become. And I think probably Lenka, you will have been invited to a meeting at the embassy, or probably at a safe house, I think, probably actually. Let me just hide Adam. There we go. Where the British military attaché and a very handsome American chap are discussing something very important. They've called you in because you are one of their contacts to the Czech underground in Prague. And the military attaché says, look, there's a bit of a flap on. 2 nights from now, some fellows from Blighty will be dropping by parachute. Would you believe bloody parachute? Just west of here. We believe near the village of Krivoklat. It's about 30 minutes drive. Their code name is Broadsword, Cloak and Dagger. What we want you to do, Lenka, is to take friend Joe here to meet them. You need to be at Krivoklat the day after the drop in order to pick them up, get them back here, and get them into a safe house. We'll provide the usual facilities. And all the memo from London says is lend all possible assistance to their mission. So that's your intent. So the land party, Joe and Lenka, what's going to be your cover story for this excursion out of Prague?
Well, does Joe have a car with diplomatic plates?
You know, I was just looking at cars in Europe in the 1930s, and yeah, I imagine there must be sort of like a carpool. You know that he could. Does that make sense, Alan? I don't want to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just bear in mind that U.S. diplomatic plates. Just be aware of the possible consequences.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think I had said earlier that this is sort of, don't get caught, don't be seen. Otherwise you'll be disavowed. So so perhaps on that note, yeah, maybe. That
sounds terribly official.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be that I, as a member of the Sudeten party, would like to show you the great new, our country and how it's prospering underneath a new rule, and would guide you along. So if they buy this cover story, I don't think the Germans would be able to distinguish between accents. So if we have those guys in our car and drive another way back than the one we came, so we don't hit the same roadblock twice, I think it would be pretty safe to just get them into the city. And of course, some Germans would have seen them as possible American diplomats that are around, but it would be a better cover story. I don't know how good that German or Czech is.
Okay, so just to be clear then, you are going with the embassy pool car, the US embassy pool car.
That's what it sounds like, and that sounds perfectly fine. We
Okay.
can, we can say he's
And this is a sightseeing tour with a Czech guide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps we'll drop off the car someplace, and then that's where we sneak off. Does that make sense? Or
okay. So, what time do you aim to arrive at the village where you're supposed to rendezvous with Broadsword? They are dropping in the middle of the night. When do you want to get there? It's only a 30 or 40-minute drive.
That's a great question. What do you think, Linka? Would it draw more attention if we did this during the day, or if we did this at night?
It would, of course, draw more attention during the night, because the guards would not believe us that we are going sightseeing at night.
Fair enough.
We could, of course, do the romantic date thing, but then it would be confusing where we have two guys in the back seat. So I would suggest either doing it at night, or driving there 1 route in the morning and then back at the beginning of night. But I think we should just pick them up in the morning, take the long way around, and drive into Prague on the other side.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is you're going to arrive there in the morning. So you're not going to, set off in the dark, but you'll set off to get there in the morning. Fine. That's what I need to know. And my last question is whether there's anything incriminating in the car. Now, this would be a good point for me to just point you to the bottom of the character keeper, where you'll find some equipment. You can, if you want, have false papers, knapsack bag, and a suicide pill. I don't think they'll issue Joe a suicide pill. But Lenka, you can certainly have a suicide pill, unless you declare you don't. You can have a knife, maps, compass, stuff like that. It takes up no space, but it is potentially incriminating. And then all the other stuff on that list, and anything in the boxes that are blank at the bottom you wanted to add, they're all incriminating. So is there anything incriminating in the car, or is this an absolutely straight, the American diplomat and his young Czech guide? That's what I need to know.
Could I, is it too much of a stretch to have sort of a suitcase or a briefcase, actually probably more appropriate, with like a false bottom, and perhaps, that's where, whether, some of the tools of the trade might be hidden?
Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with Blades in the Dark, but the load arrangements here are lifted from blades. So what that sounds like, Joe, is that you are selecting a light load. Light load, you can pass for civilians. Medium load, you could draw some suspicion because you seem to be overburdened for a civilian. And heavy load, you look like what you are, which is a very well-equipped professional on a dangerous job. Yeah. So yeah, for knapsack and bag, read small suitcase. That's fine. Lenka, what about you? Are you light, medium, or heavy loaded?
I'm taking a knife, so that would be light loaded. I'm thinking about taking the rations, like just filling the car with like sausages and beer and other food stuff that works to bribe German soldiers in a friendly way, as well as having food with us.
So a picnic. Well, look,
yes.
You don't need to select anything at this point. You will simply select from the list at a point where you think you need it, up to the limit of your load. So it sounds like you're going light loaded to pass as a civilian.
Yeah.
And when the time comes, you can tick 3 boxes worth of stuff from that list below. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, flipping back then to the air party. You drop in the dark, but there's sufficient moonlight to identify the lights of Prague away to the east and a distinctive church spire to the south of your landing site. It's less than a mile from the drop zone, and that was the spire you're to head for. It's been chosen because it's distinctive, and that is the village of Krivelklat. You've come down in open fields bordered by woodland. My assumption is that you've buried the parachutes in the woodland. Your briefing continued. We've received intelligence that a Czech priest claims to know something that will embarrass the Nazis. That would be jolly handy. He's been given codename Angel. He is your target, if you will. You need to find out what Angel knows. Land party, we flash back to your briefing. Codename Angel is a priest sympathetic to the resistance. He claims that children are being abducted by the occupying troops. Evidence of that would be helpful propaganda, if it's true. But London will need direct, trustworthy testimony and/or documentary or photographic evidence. Without that, this is just hearsay and worth nothing to the government. Land party. As you are leaving Prague, there's a German checkpoint. What do you do?
Yeah, let's roll up and be friendly. I would say we are rolling down the windows already, putting a smile on our faces. I don't think we need to have our papers ready because we are in a diplomatic car.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm I've got charming dialed up to 11, and I exchange glances with Lenka, and are you ready?
Okay, well, now you will find on the other rules tab, on the basic moves tab, you'll find avoid detection. When your cover falters and you're at risk of exposure. Now, I don't think your cover's faltered yet, but let's see how at risk of exposure you are. So who's going to make the roll for convincing them? I'm going to give you an extra D. I'm going to give you the expertise dice, come what may, because of the number plates. So who's going to roll?
Lenka, I was going to suggest, I assume you're driving since you know the way. Do you want to be in the driver's seat on this, or how do you feel?
I think I should be in the passenger seat. Okay. Because Nazi's probably sexist also, and it's your car, and I'm the guest or the guide. So
that makes perfect sense to me as well. Okay.
Now, the way the dice roll works is that you're rolling the normal white dice and the expertise dice for the diplomat. You don't have to roll the stress dice yet. Okay. You can add that in later and re-roll. So would you roll the white dice and the expertise dice, please?
Okay. So I just re-rolled them, and I got a 4. A 3 and a 1, I beg your pardon. That's right there, not additive.
Now, a 2 to 3, you'll need to convince them you're innocent or slip away inconspicuously. You can re-roll that if you re-roll with the stress dice. Would you like to re-roll with the stress dice, Joe?
Absolutely. I think this is the first time that Joe's been in a stressful encounter like this, and it's maybe.
So you highlight all 3 of them and you re-roll.
Let's see. Okay, so the white came up a 6.
Okay, but unfortunately the stress dice also came up.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So if when the stress dice is in a pool and it comes up equal to or higher than your other high dice, then you mark stress. So everyone starts with 1 stress. Can you mark a second stress point, please? But it does mean with a 6 that it goes swimmingly well. You succeed perfectly. However, there is something really unsettling about this encounter. What is it that unsettles Joe?
Perhaps he detects that there's even an element of anxiety and nervousness among the checkpoint guards. Would that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
completely not what he would have expected. I mean, he was anticipating them to be aggressive, gruff, displaying, you know what I mean, sort of these power stances, folded arms, abrupt, etc., etc. So yeah.
And in fact, they're nervous too. How does that increase in your stress level manifest?
I don't think I understood that question. I'm sorry. Can you rephrase it?
So your stress has gone from 1 to 2.
Yes.
How does that affect you? Do you see any physical sign of that? Does there bead of sweat? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, I imagine Joe is always smoking, and so even his normally cool hands, are shaking as they hold, the sort of cigarette between his fingers.
Fine, and they ask for a light, and there's a slight waver in the lighter as you
got it.
Fine, okay, right. Let's move then to land. You know about Angel. You arrived just as planned. That didn't delay you at all. Certainly Lenka will have expected a checkpoint on the road out of Prague. So you pull into Krivoklat. It's a tiny little village. It has a church. It has a town hall. It has a inverted commas hotel, which is really a bar with a room or two, and not a lot else. What do you do? Where do you park? Where will you wait?
So can I ask a question? Is it active at the moment? Are the streets busy or?
I think that this is an agricultural village, so I think they will have been up and about since dawn, and you weren't intending to arrive at the crack of dawn, I think. So it's probably 9 a.m. in the morning, 9:30, and there are people about. Yeah.
Okay.
No sign of any occupation troops.
I'm sorry, you said no sign?
No sign.
Gotcha. I guess I look to Lenka and I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I've never done this before. I mean, what doesn't look normal? I mean,
well, we should keep talking in English. It's not all that common that people speak it here, so that should be our disguise. Still, we should stay in our role once we leave the car. So I will be telling you about how great all this stuff is after the Nazis occupied it, and you will be excited about it and don't arouse any suspicion. And then we will walk to the edge of the forest and see if we can meet up with our friends.
How about this? Why don't we see if we can get directions to, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of farmer's market or grocer. I mean, what do you think?
We could ask around, but why should we talk with people so they remember us if we could just walk through town and look at things?
Right.
She's done this before.
Clearly.
So it sounds like you are going to do what you set out to do, which was to show this American diplomat your lovely country, while trying to work out where they might be. Okay, Air. The plan is for some of our people to meet you in the village. They'll get you to a safe house in Prague, and you're off and running. We'll provide papers which will identify you with a cover as Swedish bird watchers. We think it's unlikely you'll encounter anyone who speaks any Swedish. And you might even be able to get away with using English as your second language. Meanwhile, of course, bird watching will give you plenty of scope for wandering about the countryside. And unless either of you speaks Czech, of course. Do you?
Not me. Some Polish, some Belgian.
I think it's unlikely either of you speak Czech. So you dropped. It's about 3 or 4 hours to dawn. What do you do during that 3 to 4 hours? You will have noticed we're operating on slightly different timelines here, but that's for reasons that I won't bore you with. What do you do? Do you head towards the village in the night, or do you lie low?
I'd suggest nighttime is a good time to move. less chance of being found. I take it we've got map and we've also got compass. So yeah, I'll orientate my map, take a bearing, and I'd suggest we walk on that bearing until we get to the forest so we can see the spire.
You can see the spire from the drop zone. It's quite distinctive. So you know the general direction. So again, in your case, what load? Light, medium, or heavy? Same as before. Light, you pass the civilians. Medium, that's strangely overloaded for a civilian. Heavy, my goodness me, look, it's a Bren gun.
Well, I think we would have started off with a heavy load, but with an understanding that as we can better ascertain what's around us, that we can drop equipment, bury equipment as we go to move into a better cover.
Okay, so that sounds like you're not going to go heavy loaded. Medium or light?
I mean, I'm actually imagining that we'll. Oh, okay. Well, so since we landed well, I think we'll probably like bury anything we don't need with the parachute and just go. I would say medium at this point.
Yeah, mechanically, how many dots does medium get you?
Medium. If you have a look on the bottom of the character keeper, it'll tell you. Medium gets you 2 more than light, so you get as far as 5.
Yeah, medium sounds fine.
Okay, so would you mark those, please, just for the record? So you arrive on the outskirts of the village in the small hours of the morning. It's 3 hours till dawn. What are you going to do?
I'd probably say clearly pre-dawn there'll be nobody moving around in the village, so that would be a silly time to walk around the village. So I think we should just drop short in the forest and get our heads down for a few hours.
Yeah. It could be a good time to scout the perimeter. I agree we wouldn't want to walk through the village, but if there's enough cover in the forest, it could be, as long as there's a place where we could walk around the outside of the village and get the lay of the land. 3 hours is a lot of time.
The immediate outskirts is fields. So you can get to the edge of the forest and you can see the village maybe 400 yards away. And there are fields between you and it. So
okay.
If you want to get much closer than that, you'll be out in the open.
No, yeah.
Tell us the moon state, Alan, please.
I think probably I'm trying to remember what practice was. I think they used to drop at the full moon actually to make it easier to land. So I think it's probably full moonish, apart from some cloud cover.
Well, cloud cover is quite important. How much cloud cover?
Well, you tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you how well it goes.
Well, if there's a full moon in it, it depends how silhouetted we'd become. So clearly, just sitting in a forest, we're not going to generate any silhouette moving along the forest line. But as soon as we start walking out across fields, we would be silhouetted. So I think with the amount of moonlight.
Yeah, once you get out on those fields, you could wait for a cloud to drift across, but it's you are going to be noticeable in the open.
Then I'll probably say I'm more than happy just to sit in the forest with the trees acting as a background so we can't be seen.
Okay. Do you sleep or do you stay awake? Do you set watches? Who knew I was going to say that phrase in this game?
Well, we're both military men, so we'd know not to both sleep. One would always be awake while one sleeps.
Fine. Then let me see. I think probably the younger man will probably stay awake a bit longer. He's also the NCO, not the officer. So Ben, could you roll some dice to tell me how good a watch you keep? I think probably this is with expertise because you have survival. So the white dice plus the expertise dice to do something else, as the rules describe it.
Great. I got a 1 and a 2.
Okay, now do something else. 1 to 3. You barely succeed. The GM reacts to exact some personal cost or by offering you a hard choice. So do you want to stick with that, or do you want to re-roll with the stress dice in the pool?
Yeah, it's early on. Let's have a complication.
Okay.
Let's stick with this.
Okay. Ben, you wake to find an old man standing over you, talking to you in a language you don't understand. What do you do?
First thing I do is I nudge the colonel, who I assume is still beside me, and I immediately reach for my bird guide and binoculars, which I had handy, and I say, "Oh, hello," in English. So good to see you, and I immediately listen for a bird, like any bird that might be chirping in the morning, so I can have something to point at.
Okay, let's see. I think I'll leave it at that, because I think you do succeed. But mark binoculars and mark off an equipment box. So you
Okay.
have binoculars, and we'll assume compass, maps, etc. amounts to also a bird guide. And this old man is jabbering on. Adrian, what do you do when you realize that you've been kind of a bit caught out?
For fuck's sake, man, how dare you allow him to get so close? You weren't snoozing on the job? Very well, I'll reach into my pack and I will pull out some rations. And I will offer this local a bit of food.
I think a foreign chocolate bar would go a long way in Czechoslovakia at this point. So will you mark 4 person days of rations onto your equipment load? And he smiles. Oh, he talks away in Czech.
Dobra, dobra.
And then says, birds. Ah, right. And he goes back to where he's got a plow around the corner. Now, it is now morning. People are working in the fields. What are the air party going to do?
Well, we definitely can't hang around here now that our cover's been blown by the sleeping NCO. So I would suggest that we move onwards and go to the spire. Well, the church that the spire is attached to.
Okay, land party. You've wandered around the village to no real avail, really. It's a tiny, 1-horse town with nice views to some high ground with a forest and some clear ground beyond that. How far from the village do you want to stray?
I feel like this might be an opportunity to just kind of, get a lay of the land and just sort of understand, oh yeah, I can see over there's a checkpoint. Why don't we just sort of, inconspicuously turn around and kind of continue our drive? And does that make sense? What do you think, Lenka?
Sounds reasonable. Like if we can drive close to the edge of the forest, that would be great too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As you drive, as you aim to get out of the village and kind of try to do a circuit of the village as best you can nearer the forest, you notice a German army truck drives into the village as you're driving out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as the military attaché said, look, we know very little about local conditions. We know very little about German deployment. You'll have to use your best judgment. Up until now, our best information is that checkpoints are not being set up routinely in the village, though all villages are subject to random checkpoints. To be honest, we've selected the village as being one that we think is the least likely to draw any attention. So, just keep your fingers crossed and wait for Broadsword to turn up. Do you speak to anybody as you've been wandering around the village? I'm just curious. And now, as you're driving out, do you is you waving to somebody you've had a chat with?
Not if no one comes up to us.
I think lots of people will look at you. You will be a subject of interest because this is rather a posh car for Krivoklat. Okay.
Can I interject? I would almost think that Joe cannot help himself, but sort of be, I don't know, outward and waving and smiling at just everyone. And, he's of his time, let's put it that way, that every time he sees a, pretty young face, he, can't help but smile and, want to sort of slow the car down and engage. Does that make sense? I mean, it's almost like in spite of the seriousness of this all, he takes on this air of like, I'm on a holiday and, look at that amazing thing. And, there's a sight.
And for the rest of the war, people will be talking about the day that American film star came to the village.
You got
it. So you drive round, and I guess now it's kind of, I need to ask Adrian, you can't stay where you are, or you don't think you can because it might look a bit suspicious, I think. So what do you do?
Well, the church is a landmark. It seems like the best thing to do is to head into town and, lay relatively low, but we've got to make contact somehow, somewhere.
The church would be a good place because the chance of the Nazis actually coming into a church to do mischief is slim than any other location I'd have thought in town. And yeah, you can easily hang around in the church for long periods of time without really drawing too much suspicion.
Okay, so these two Swedish bird watchers come into the village and head towards the church. As you come into the village square, you see a rather flash car driving away. And as you're watching it drive away, and you sure you can spot US diplomatic plates on the back of it, there's a rumble behind you when a German army truck comes into the village. What do you do?
Just keep walking normally like a bird watcher would walk.
I think it would be good to know how either of you, or both of you actually, it'd be good to know how both of you can actually carry off this undercover business. So, Adrian, do you have expertise you would like to deploy? Paul, I don't. We can hear you. Are you muted?
Yeah, I don't think I've got any background in so survival, heavy weapons, infiltration.
I was thinking more well-educated Belgian aristocrat, actually.
I could pull that off quite easily from my background. So yeah, I'll have a go on that.
So let you roll the ordinary dice and the expertise dice to avoid detection. Let's just see whether they spot anything suspicious, because they've stopped in the village and the lorry is unloading. Go ahead.
Double 5.
Okay, so on a 5, you don't attract any unwanted attention. And I think I'm not even going to force Ben to roll on that, because I think they will see this rather well set up gentleman walking across the market square with somebody in tow, and their attention is not on you. They are setting up a checkpoint at the far end of the village. Did you say we're going into the church?
Yeah, we'll definitely hang around the doorway of the church. So if any Germans come near, we'll go in and start praying. I mean, what sort of church is it?
Catholic.
Excellente, because I think I put in my background that
You
I
did.
did indeed go to a Catholic school, so I know all the dogma that would go along with that. So yeah, we'll just hang around the doorway, do some observation. We can take turns praying. I don't know of your background religiously, Ben. Are you Church of England or
I'm
some
sure I'd
other?
be Church of England. Is it? Is it? I think there might be different terms for the Church in America and in England. Is it called Church of England in England? I think here we call it Anglican, or is
Yeah,
that
Anglican. Yeah, that's
Anglican?
right.
Is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Church of England at home, Anglican abroad. So you're in the church, out of sight, out of mind. The land party have left the village and spend the next hour going round about, scanning the forest and seeing nothing. But by the time you get back to the village, the checkpoint is set up at the far end of the village, not the end. That's the end you left through, not the one you arrived back through. There are 10 German soldiers. Most of them are on the checkpoint, but 2 or 3 are wandering around the village. What do you do, Lenka and Joe?
Well, I imagine, I guess we're all ultimately heading towards, the church. I mean, that feels like the logical point. Would you agree, Lenka? I mean, if we know that, Angel is potentially, or this codename Angel is potentially our contact, I mean, how do you feel?
Yep, church sounds good. Either church or the hotel, but let's go church first.
Yeah, and I'm imagining that we're kind of just, commenting on the, what we see as far as like troop movements or checkpoints being set up, taking notes and stuff like that. Does that make sense as well?
Let's just assume they are great. Well, we keep it in mind, but we are not talking about that once we leave the car.
Absolutely.
They are. We are happy to see them. They are great guys, and we love them being here.
Yeah, I just sort of look at them admiringly and just, oh yeah. I mean, do we even at some point, do you imagine maybe, I don't know, do we like engage in, friendly banter or anything like that, or do we not push it that far?
If we meet one of them in the streets, we are surely greeting them.
Cool.
Yes, there's a polite doffing of hats, I think, probably, if you encounter one of them. So you're heading towards the church. Okay, in the church, air party. The last thing that your briefing said was, look, I won't butter this up, chaps. The fact is, you'll be parachuting into a country occupied by the Third Reich, with whom we may well be at war at any time. You will have false papers. So I'm afraid that if you're captured, we'll deny all knowledge of you. And there is a pill in your kit, which, frankly, for both your benefit and ours, we would suggest you take if things get sticky. That was the end of your briefing. Yeah. Land party. The end of your briefing was, we'll of course do everything we can if you end up in custody for any reason, but I'm afraid consular services are rather strained at the moment. So we will be issuing you, Lenka, with one of these, just in case it, well, becomes the sensible thing to do. So air party, the church door creaks open. What do you do?
You mean while we're inside? I think I can imagine that we probably would position ourselves in a strategic way so that we could, one of us could be in the pews, keeping an eye toward the front of the church. The other is maybe at, like one of the other side altars, looking like we're praying, so that we can, keep an eye on toward the front door, so that we basically, one of the two of us always has an eye out on the entire church. And occasionally we'll sort of move around so we don't look like we're just sitting in the same place the entire time.
Okay.
I'll take the pew position then.
So
based
looking
on-
towards the altar.
Yeah, based on what you said, Ben. And I will be not too quietly, actually, chanting the Lord's Prayer in English.
Oh. Now, because what I was going to ask the air party, what is the question that begins the exchange of phrases that will allow you to recognize your contacts?
Well, I think maybe what I just said then, the Lord's Prayer in English.
Our Father who art in heaven. The trouble is, if it's not a question, it's very difficult for the other party to respond. And you need a question and a response.
Oh, easy. Is that the Catholic version or the Anglican version?
Okay. Lenka, what's the answer to the key question? Is it the Catholic or the Anglican?
Lutheran, of course, is the answer.
Fine. So the answer is neither. It's Lutheran.
Yeah.
So two people come into the back of the church. What do you do, Adrian and Ben?
Well, what do they look like? I put myself there so I could get a good eye on them. Oh, are you muted?
I am. Man and a woman.
Not dressed like German military.
No.
Not dressed like the locals.
No.
No.
All right. I try not to get excited, but I think this might be them. I try to just keep doing what I'm doing.
Okay. Adrian,
Keep an eye on them.
what do you do?
Also muted.
Actually, I think at this point, I think upon seeing them, I'll probably take enough time that it doesn't look conspicuous, but I will probably at that point go up to Adrian so that assuming that Adrian isn't gonna like interrupt his prayer to like whip his head around and check them out, right? Like,
Okay. Adrian, what do you do?
So Ben has come up and joined me at the pew next to me. I will I'll continue to say my prayer at least to the end of the prayer. I mean, clearly the Lord's Prayer isn't a particularly long one, and then I will slowly lean to Adrian and say, "What's brought you from the back of the church, Ben?"
a couple has entered. They look like they could be from the city. Not German military that I can see.
Then probably if you cover them and see if they approach me, and I'll start the Lord's Prayer again.
Very good.
So, Joe and Lenka, there's a man reciting the Lord's Prayer in English in the church with somebody else sat beside him looking back at you.
Yeah, I think we approached them. Just do the phrase, and I'm thinking to myself, for fuck's sake, he wears an eye patch.
Adrian, they're walking up the center of the church, and they'll shortly be level with you. What do you do?
I will drop my commando dagger from my sleeve into my hand, just in case we need to rock and roll. I will actually increase the volume somewhat of my prayer, so it could clearly be heard by those approaching.
So, the question was, is that the Catholic or the Protestant version? And the response that you would be expecting, Land Party, is Lutheran. Do you ask the question? And if so, who asks the question?
I look to Lenka and I say, what are these? Are these the pros that they sent to help us out? I mean, why don't you go ahead and engage Lenka?
I walk up to them, sit close enough so they can hear me, and then once Adrian's finished, I ask, so is this the Catholic or the Anglican version?
And the
I
answer
shall
is
reply with, it's neither. It's the Lutheran version.
Okay. I'm going to suggest we break there. Sorry, that's gone on rather longer than I'd anticipated. So let's take a 10-minute break. It's just gone 10 to the hour now. Shall we back in our seats on the hour, and we'll get you back to Prague sharpish. Okay.
Yeah.
See you in 10. definitely benefits from time to breathe, Eduardo. I think, you know, the one-shot model for this, you really do have to fly straight into a gunfight, don't you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we've talked about this before, that just, my goodness, you know, online versus in person, it's like time flies. You know, I've got it in my head that a scene takes anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And that means you have like, geez, 4 scenes maybe. You know what I mean? 4 or 5 scenes, depending on, you know, how long character creation takes.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm thinking of writing something down about it, because I just find it so noticeably different.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, on the upside, when you've got a certain frame of 4 sessions, you can allow a session to kind of just the characters to bed in and then move on. Right.
You know, apropos to nothing, is there a policy or is there a practice on the Gauntlet that if you book 4 or 5 sessions, but you're done one early, you know, be it 3 or 4? I mean, what do other people do, you know, with that?
I stretch shamelessly.
Let's have another scene where everybody's just chatting at the bar.
No, I mean, I think the Gauntlet does kind of pride itself on landing something, you know, in terms of arc. But I think if the arc's done, the arc's done. Anyway, we're back in the room. Okay, so I'm now going to cut us to a safe house in Prague. Yeah, Lenka, you know, the geography of Prague is something that none of us need to be concerned about particularly. But what kind of district is the safe house in?
I think it's like near the university, where you where it wouldn't be too strange to see some people of different ages hanging out, and where people you know, speaking different languages wouldn't be too strange.
Okay, so I'm writing down Bohemian / cosmopolitan. Yeah, fine.
Bohemian indeed.
Yeah. Adrian, what is it about the safe house that reassures you that it might be safe?
I think probably where we are in the safe house, probably in a basement or a loft space, I would have thought. So we'll actually be one more step removed from public eye.
So which is it, basement or loft?
Basement with a exit, I would have liked, other than the exit into the house.
Okay, so into the apartment block and stairs down to the basement apartment where you are, but there's a way out at the back. What is it about the apartment that reassures Ben that it's safe?
So it's an apartment for holding like international students.
No, it's a safe house in as much as it's an off the books British Embassy safe house.
Off the books British Embassy. Okay. So what is it? Well, I think there's oh, this is a British Embassy safe house here. Okay.
It's unofficial. It's undercover.
Okay.
So what is it about either the way it's laid out or some aspect of its security that reassures Ben?
I think it's got handy exits to some like back alleys. So there's multiple ways to get out.
Adrian's given us a back exit. What else?
It has like at the top of the house, there is also there's also like a little bit of the peek into the house with a window at the top that's a little bit above everything else, so you can get a good view of a lot of things in the what's going on down on the street below here.
So it's a basement apartment, but there's easy access to a well-spotted skylight at the top. Fine, that works for me. Joe, what worries you most about the safe house?
It's not where I thought you were going. What worries me the most about the safe house? Did we say that it was near the university? Yeah, perhaps it's the amount of traffic. You know what I mean? There's just of foot traffic. Although it looks like there's a lot of young people. It's just I think maybe Joe's distrustful.
Certainly he wouldn't have parked the embassy car here. I'm assuming the car's back in the carpool and you've made your way here on foot. And yes, I think probably from Joe's point of view, he's thinking, there are so many people here, any of these people could be following me.
Yeah, I'm a spy. I mean, what's to stop these other people from being spies?
Okay. So, Lenka, the briefing went as far as there is this priest, not in Prague, as far as you know, but there is a priest with this evidence. But the person who knows most about that is somebody higher up in the resistance. The Czech resistance movement is very early on in its time. But this guy his code word is Gaspar. And your job is to get a meeting between these three and Gaspar so he can provide the information that they think they've been sent to get. So how would you normally go about contacting the resistance, Lenka?
I think I would meet some people I know in a bar or something like that, drink with them, and slip them a note while I was there with what I needed exactly, and then they would send me something back at a in briefcase thing, like there's this little crack in the railing of one of the bridges, and then I go there, pick out the note, and see whatever they have to tell me.
The devotee of Le Carré in me is now thinking dead letterboxes and stuff stuffed inside things. Okay, yeah. So how? And I will remind you, the occupation is 2-3 months old. There are informers everywhere. So Lenka, how do you go about getting to the place where you need to pass the message on and then expect it back the following day? What do we see in the movie of this?
Yeah, you probably see Lenka adjusting her hairdo, not wearing glasses this time as she leaves the house. Like she's she has a bag of books that's fitting for a university student, and so she can drop it since it's a movie, we see her once, some Nazis are near, and it seems like she would be searched. She drops the bag, and paper scatters everywhere, so they don't they're not noticing a single one of those. She puts them back in. She seems like just a clumsy student, carries on with her papers, and goes to wherever she needs to be going. And you're muted.
When you've gathered all your books up, put them back in the bag, and you're setting off, there's a polite call from behind. Excuse me, in German.
Yeah, I assume I speak German.
I think you do.
Yeah.
I think you dropped this. A German officer says.
Yeah, I come back and I take the whatever I dropped.
Shall we see how cool under pressure you are by having you avoid detection, or see whether the pressure cracks you a little?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is definitely with expertise because of your tradecraft.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the white dice and the orange dice.
Yes. So I'm at 4.
4. you don't attract any unwanted attention. So it appears to be entirely innocent, this officer's attention to you. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm thanking him in German, and yeah.
Fine. And you set off to the bar or coffee house or cafe, where who are you meeting there? Or is this just somewhere you drop a message? I wasn't quite clear.
Yeah, I'm meeting someone there and handing a note to them. Yeah, I'm. It's a bar where students are hanging around, like maybe some fraternity people and people like that who are patriotic to the Czech cause. And but it wouldn't be super suspicious for any student to show up there, and I'm getting a beer and sitting down, and as one of them gets up or for a toast or something, I slip the paper into his back pocket.
Fine. So this is someone known to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What's his name?
Ladislaus.
Fine. And as I understood it right, you put the message in and then you go somewhere to this dead letterbox to collect it the following day.
Yeah, to collect the answer.
Okay. What though the rest of you are in the safe house while Lenka is gone. What are you doing? Do you want a scene in the safe house, or do you just want to move on?
I mean, the camera can quickly snap to the safe house, weapon cleaning, checking equipment, that kind of stuff, and then flick back. As far as I'm concerned, but Ben and anybody else, that's your call.
I mean, given where we are on the clock, that would work for me, because a quick kind of little kind of snapshot of each of you doing something, and certainly the equipment will be with you, whatever you want. Anything else? Ben, Joe?
Go ahead, Ben.
Adrian's description sounds about right. Yeah, just preparing equipment, getting ready.
Okay. And so we then cut to the following day with Lenka going to the bridge to collect whatever message has been left. Yeah? So Lenka, there's this crack in the wall of an arch underneath the bridge where you can walk next to the river. And how do we see you approaching that? What precautions, if any, are you taking?
I'm walking under along the river under the bridge. Then I'm leaning against the wall, and I'm fetching a cigarette out of my bag, and I'm using that time to look around and see if anyone has been following me, if anyone is close.
That sounds like you're using the expertise of your tradecraft to do something else.
Yes.
So go ahead.
That's a 5.
So on a 5, you succeed, and the GM will ask you what benefit you get. Oh, sorry, no, the GM may offer you an extra benefit. I think I will offer you absolute certainty. You took several alternative routes. You passed through a department store. You joined a crowd. You are as confident as you can be that you are not observed. And so when you get back to the safe house, you discover that the meeting is set for tonight at a cafe in the district that the safe house is in. It's Cafe Letka. It's a basement. Well, you know it as basement jazz club.
Yep, I'm telling all of that to the guys.
So how are we preparing for this then? I mean, the mechanical bit is I need to know what load you're taking with you.
It's a jazz club, so let's get dressed for a jazz club.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to like bring a whole bunch of gear. I mean, other than like a few hidden weapons at best. They're not. If we get caught here, that's it's not a lot we can do.
So
Yeah. Light load, definitely. Some civilian clothes, maybe a black turtleneck.
That's a bit sophisticated for a 59-year-old, but we'll go with the turtleneck.
Nice.
The name's Vart, Adrian de Vart.
Ben will ask Lenka if she has suggestions for what he should wear.
Yeah, she suggests the fashionable clothing that wouldn't seem odd for someone his age wearing.
Right.
Go on.
I'll just say I'll just wear whatever she'll pick out for me.
I mean, to be honest, you didn't drop with very much. You have bird watching clothes and you have another suit of clothes. So it's the other suit of clothes, I think.
Yeah, unless we wanted to go shopping for clothes.
Well, I probably wouldn't want to be seen on the street, but I have a normal build, so if you wanted to pick up a thing for me, I'm sure it would be fine.
I mean, I don't think we need to be carried away with the fashion here. I mean, this is wartime Central Europe, so rationing has probably been introduced to the civilian population.
All right, so it is a jazz club.
It is a jazz club. It is. So is everyone light loaded? If that's the case, alter your character keeper to show that. And I'm going to go straight to Cafe Letka unless somebody tells me not to. Yeah, okay. So the first impression is of loud jazz music coming up some steps from the pavement, from the sidewalk, from this basement club. And when you cross the threshold, it's a low cellar with brick arches and pillars at intervals down this. It's probably quite a big space, but it's packed. It's chock-a-block with students and other people. Conversation, the music, you can cut the smoke in here with a knife. Vaulted brick pillars. It makes getting a view of the whole thing quite difficult from the stairs where you come in. So what's the plan, team?
I probably know what Gaspar looks like, right?
Sadly, you don't. Gaspar is too far above your pecking order.
Cool. Did I get any hints about...
What's the password that you pass between members of the resistance?
We are dropping some reference to Jan Hus, which was like a famous medieval Czech revolutionary. Okay.
So if talking about that, and in a jazz club, that would be quite unusual. It's not going to crop up by accident. So there's a small band making a lot of noise in the far end, and a female singer crooning. It's packed. Where do you locate yourself? There's a bar on one side, the small stages at the far end. There are tables. There are some booths along the side. What's your preference?
Tell us about exits, Alan, please.
There appears to be a door at the back of the stage.
Any windows in the toilets?
I think you're probably going to investigate the scene, aren't you, Adrian?
That would sound like, yeah, I'd like to get a feel of the place, please.
So while Adrian wanders off to have a look round, what are the other three of you doing?
I think I'm going up to the bar to order a drink, and I think I understood that we don't have any sense of Gaspar's physical description.
Nothing at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there a dance floor or some like central place?
There's a bit of space at the front, just in front of the singer, where one or two couples are just making some moves.
I just stationed myself at the bar with a drink, and I'm just keeping an eye on the whole place.
Okay. Lenka, are you going to go towards the dance floor, or are you staying at the bar?
I'm going to the I'm going to the dance floor. but I'm also asking Joe, are you a dancer?
Of course.
Great. So let's get to the in front of the stage. So I think it's likely I have been described to Gaspar, and he is the one who would initiate the contact. So
Right.
let's make sure he sees me and go to a prominent place. But let's dance with the good-looking guy, so people are not exactly only looking at me.
Fine. Well, while you're doing that, getting drinks, going to the dance floor, Adrian, roll to investigate something, please. And are you claiming this is with your expertise?
Well, I have infiltrate, so yeah, I think that would sort of be scouting out a place if you're going to infiltrate it. Sounds pretty good to me.
Okay. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Go on. So 2 dice. Oh.
There we go. A 6. Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, on a 6, you get the information. So the bare information is there's a door at the back of the stage and there's a door to one side with marked toilet. But then you can ask me 3 questions about this place. What do you want to know?
Is it a list of questions or is it just anything?
No, any 3 questions.
Yeah, what does it back onto?
Well, you asked me about a window in the toilets, didn't you?
Yeah.
There is
a
a window. So answer question 1. There is a window out to a back alley from the male toilets.
Okay. I don't think there's much else I'd like to know at this stage. I mean, clearly I'd like to know if it's going to get raided by the Germans, but I can't really see how wandering around would know that unless I look out the window and happen to see a couple of German half-tracks parked outside.
Well, you tell me, because on a 6, you also say what you see that or realize that's beyond human knowledge or a reminder of the horror of war. What do you see out in that alley that gives you pause?
I think I do see some German. Yeah, I think I see a German truck, and they are pulling people out of a house opposite the jazz club and throwing them in the back of the truck, and then it, they push up the tailgate of the truck and drive off. So I think we're relatively safe here. So they may have raided something, but it's not our jazz club.
Shall we see how safe you are? Roll for stress on a 6.
So I roll the stress dice, yeah?
Yeah, just the white dice. That's your routine dice.
4.
That exceeds your current stress, so mark stress. Yeah. Okay. So you're dancing, Joe and Lenka. Ben, you're still at the bar. Adrian is just coming out from the toilet entrance. When a boy rushes to the bar, he's come in through the door, rushes to the bar, and gestures to the barman. And the barman hits the bar with a mallet, and it goes quiet. Everyone looks at him. What do you do?
Well, first I make eye contact with Adrian,
Okay.
and then I'm just keeping an eye on everybody else. I don't want to look conspicuous, whatever happens next.
Okay. So do what other people do. And the band stopped playing when he hit the mallet, and the woman stopped singing. And instead, they start playing some peculiar kind of folk music, which rather breaks up the dance, I have to say. So Lenka and Joe, you're at the far end of the club, of the floor, on the dance floor. What do you do when this happens?
Do I recognize what's going on with the folk music?
It's a folkified version of the Czech national anthem.
Yeah, so it might be getting rowdy in here soon?
That's an interesting question, because 2 policemen and a member of the Gestapo have just come in. They're at the door. So we've got the door. We've got Ben nearest the door at the bar. We've got you at one end of the room on the dance floor. And we've got Adrian just by the toilet door, about halfway between between the rest of you. So two policemen have come in with a member of the Gestapo, and they begin to move around among the crowd, checking papers. Ben, you're closest to them. What do you do?
Well, I'd probably get ready to have my my papers handy. Are they like immediately next to me asking people for papers, or could I still perhaps like inconspicuously move away from them without looking like I am?
I think the difficulty now is that the bar has stopped and people are looking at them and doing what you were doing, which is getting their papers ready. Mm-hmm. So if you move, you will look conspicuous, I would suggest, or there's a risk you would look conspicuous.
Yeah. Then I mean, these are those moments when you just check your fast beating heart and get the papers ready and hope that the cover holds. Presumably I'm still a Swedish birdwatcher in transit here in Prague.
You are indeed, and those are the papers you hand over to the Czech policeman when he asks for them. So would you like to just let's see whether this goes at all horribly wrong by having you avoid detection. I have to say, I doubt a tough NCO has much in the way of expertise in these circumstances.
No.
So you're just rolling the white dice.
Okay, then. Oh, I got a 6.
So you succeed. He doesn't even blink, except you can see in his eyes real fear. Much more fear than there ought to be in his eyes.
In the police officer?
In the police officer's eyes. Would you roll for stress, please?
Yeah.
Because there's something else going on here, is your immediate feel.
A 3.
Okay, that is more than your current stress, I think, so mark stress.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, next in the journey towards the far end is Adrian. Adrian, what are you going to do as a policeman begins to move through the crowd in your direction?
I'm going to go into the toilets, and I'm going to... Okay, tell me about what's in the toilets.
There's a toilet stall and a urinal.
Waste paper bin?
I doubt it.
Okay, not a problem. I shall attempt to... Clearly, I can... Is the window frosted or see-through?
I think it's probably see-through. We're in, it's long ago and far away.
Okay, so let's open the window and climb out the window.
So you climb out the window. Okay, let me have you do something else then, because I'm curious. Actually, are you fleeing the authorities?
Yeah, I am.
Right. Well, let's have you roll to flee the authorities. And while infiltration allowed you to case it, I'm not sure it's going to give you an advantage on making a run for it.
But I have got some pretty specific knowledge that I know that there's no German truck outside. And I do know the area outside because I've seen it.
Yeah, I just, what happens at the end of the alley is what I'm interested in.
Okay.
So roll 1 dice, and then you can re-roll with your stress dice if you need to.
A 1.
A 1. So you barely succeed. The GM reacts to exact some personal cost or by offering you a hard choice. As you are halfway out the window, a German patrol crosses the end of the alley. They haven't seen you, but if you go out into the alley, they may. There's your hard choice.
Okay, drop back into the toilet and go into the stall.
Fine. And finally, the Gestapo and the policeman are coming towards the pair of you on the dance floor. The Gestapo man holds out his hand to Joe, and the policeman holds out his hand to Lenka. Would you both roll, in, as long as you tell me which one rolls first, to avoid detection?
Why don't you go ahead first, Lenka?
This is definitely with expertise, yeah?
Yeah,
so,
I'm rolling a 5.
So on a 5, all is well with the world. Let's see whether Joe can hold his cool at the same time.
And we said with expertise and the white dice, correct?
I think that this. I think you've got tradecraft as well, so you can hold this together.
Yeah. So 6 on the expertise.
Fine. So they look at your paperwork and then they move out of the bar. And then the boy comes back 10 minutes later, gives the all clear, and the jazz music starts again. And then there's a tap on your shoulder, Lenka. Just, I think, probably, as Ben, you will see Adrian come out of the toilets.
Yeah, I will turn around and I'll stay in arm's reach of Joe so that I can tap and signal to him as well should something unexpected happen.
I've put a picture of Gaspar in the mission tab, and he says in Czech, he asks you, do you have any knowledge of the history of Jan Hus? You're muted.
Yeah, I studied his work at university. And now you're muted.
Why don't we have a chat about him and share a drink? And miraculously, a booth in the corner appears to have cleared. Ben, Adrian, you will see Joe and Lenka go into a booth with a man as illustrated. What do you do?
I'm happy to wander over to the booth as well.
Yeah, Ben?
I am going to stay at the bar the way I am, continuing to keep an eye on everything. But I'm going to make eye contact with the people at the booth to acknowledge.
So they know that you know. Fine. And you're sat in the booth, and Gaspar will choose to practice his English and introduce himself as a friend. No names. He doesn't expect you to tell him your names either. But the tale he has to tell you is that a village about 60 kilometers southwest of here, the village of Karlstein. The village of Karlstein, a local priest is said to have information about these abductions. These abductions which you've been sent to find out about. The trouble is that his reach in the resistance doesn't go that far. He can provide you with a liaison, but he can't guarantee a warm welcome from the resistance at that end. Do you have any questions for him?
Has he ever seen this priest? I mean, is there any identifying information that he can give us?
Only that he was the priest at a hamlet outside Karlstein called Krupna. And he's been codenamed Angel. So 5 months ago, when the Germans annexed Czechoslovakia, they split it up. 4 months ago, a company of German soldiers arrived at Castle Karlstein, and a program of building work started there. That building work went on for a month. And then when the work had finished and the contractors had left, this priest from Krupna, Father Andre, another priest told him that he'd heard concerning noises from the castle. And so Father Andre, rather unwisely in Gaspar's view, went up to the castle. And it's not clear how he got in, but he found a group of children being held there who he got out. And they talked about having been kept there and hearing screams. When he got them out, the Nazis cracked down. They searched the village, as far as Gaspar can tell, very thoroughly. Father Andre is being sheltered by the local resistance, he thinks, he assumes, as are these children. And there have been other abductions and other attempts to rescue them since. The detail, he's sad to say, is sketchy. He doesn't believe there's any way to find out exactly what's going on there without traveling to Karlstein. Do you have any questions?
Did the children provide any kind of details? I mean, anything specific that they saw, or?
He's told you what he knows about that. That's what's come back to him. What he shared with the government in exile, they shared with the British government, and that triggered this wild escapade in occupied Czechoslovakia.
So do we know what kind of resistance guys are there? Does he know any of them personally, or does he know their ideology or something like that?
He thinks in that region of Czechoslovakia that they are strongly communist by inclination, but that's sketchy. He wouldn't rely on that. What he can do is he can provide you with a liaison, someone that might be convincing to them. He can't go, obviously, it's too dangerous. But he could provide a liaison to travel there, who might be well placed to establish some trust with the local resistance.
Yeah, if he trusts the liaison, then that might be a good idea.
He does trust him. I think that what worries him slightly and what makes him think that they might be communists is that they appear to be acting rather hot-headedly. He's trying to build an effective resistance movement, and the most recent information he's had back suggests that about 6 weeks ago, they actually ambushed a convoy carrying children to the castle.
I can understand why they wouldn't want children to be captured.
Well, he appreciates the spirit of it, but where are they going to hide these children? How are they going to keep them safe? He's a pragmatist.
Yeah. So if we get there and we need to get the children out, does our resistance have any way to move them somewhere safe?
The upside of this for him is if this could be brought off, it would help build a relationship between the national resistance based in Prague and this regional resistance movement that seems to be developing all on its own. And in part, the job of the liaison he will send with you is to provide that connection back to Prague and to him. The difficulty is that because of that act of armed insurgency, there have now been civilians have been shot. The local garrison appears to be, on alert. So this won't be a walk in the park.
Well, it's not like we expected to work in the park, so we are still going.
Any other questions for him at this point? Okay, Ben, would you roll to do something, please? Because I want to know whether you notice anything. And I'm going to give you expertise on this because I think survival might be a factor.
Oh, so I get the expertise dice as well? All right,
yeah.
I'll roll that one. Boom. All right, I got 2 4s.
Fine. So the music has started playing again, but you've located yourself in a position where you can keep an eye on the place and the door. And therefore, you're one of the first people in the place to see the door burst open and a group of German soldiers pile in. What do you do?
A group of German soldiers. They're okay. So they're like on a mad rush to come in.
Yep. The toilet door is behind you.
Yeah.
The rest of the party are across the bar, but you get to act first.
Right.
Okay, while you're thinking about it,
I think I'm going to I think I'm going to like move a bit behind the bar.
Fine.
And I might shit. I think I'll get like my pistol kind of in my hand.
Right.
It looks like trouble.
Tick pistol. The 3 of you on the other side of the room. You now see a kind of screams and disturbance rippling away from the door. What do you do?
Looking at Gaspar and asking him where we will meet the liaison.
He's already heading towards the door at the back of the stage. Adrian, what do you do?
I'll follow.
Follow him.
Yep.
Joe, what do you do?
I think follow him as well.
Lenka, what do you do?
Yep, I'm following.
Ben, what do you do?
I follow.
I think probably, Ben, you're last out.
Yeah.
So you're going to be most noticeably, most noticeable. There's a bit of a stampede towards that door, actually. So would you roll to do something else to get out of there alongside the others rather than being delayed by the crowd between you and it?
Okay. Any expertise?
I don't think so this time.
Nice. I got a 1.
Okay. Would you like to re-roll?
This seems like a good opportunity to re-roll. So that would be with stress?
Yeah. You roll the white dice and the stress dice again.
All right.
You see what happens? And because the stress dice was lower than the 6, you don't even have to worry about stress. So you elbow your way through. The tough NCO in you is elbowing your way through to get to that door so you don't become detached from the others. When you get to the back alley, Gaspar says to, I think Adrian was next out, he says, go that way. And he goes the other way. What do you do, Adrian?
I go the opposite direction to that Gaspar.
Lenka, Joe, Ben, are you inclined to do anything but follow Adrian?
I think I will walk with Gaspar. I need to the information where we can get in contact so we can actually do the thing.
So you're going to go with him?
Yeah.
Okay. So Adrian, you lead Joe and Ben in one direction. Lenka's run the other way with Gaspar. You come to the end of the alley, and you can see round the front there's another truck of troops. What do you do?
Describe the street layout here, can you?
Okay. If we think of a block with a club in it,
yep.
You've come out in an alley at the back, and the alley runs along the length, yeah?
Yep.
So
Gaspar turned right, we turned left.
Indeed.
Ends up with a T-junction?
It does, and there's a main road there that you come out onto, and at the corner of the cross-section of that main road with the one that the club is on, that's where the truck is unloading. What do you do?
So we can easily turn right and
You
avoid.
could turn right here.
Yep, turn right and avoid.
Yeah. Then I think probably I'm going to ask you to flee the authorities. And as you are the point man, I think you're it. I think that you're doing this in a strictly military way. I don't think there's no tradecraft in this, so it's without expertise.
Okay, so I've picked the white dice.
Mm-hmm.
6.
6. You get away scot-free. But for the first time, I think, it comes home to Adrian that this is real. This is not a game. This is a serious business, because as you turned round the corner that took you to safety, you heard shooting behind you. Would you roll for stress, please?
Six.
Then mark stress. How does this manifest? How is Adrian a little looking or behaving a bit differently when he gets back to the safe house than he was when he left?
Yeah, I think he's a bit shaken. Clearly, you know, this is not a declaration of war yet, so he's seeing it in a civilian point of view rather than from a military point of view.
Okay. Now we've got about 15 minutes, so what I'm going to do, Lenka, is offer you a chance to epilogue your way out of this session. So what do we see? We've cut back from the safe house to you. It could be earlier, before they get back to the safe house. What do we see as an epilogue for Lenka before she leaves this series on this occasion?
Well, we see her following Gaspar through the alleyways, and she does she does get like the information from him or she gives the information to him where he has to send the laser, so they can help the Brits, and relates to him that this could get the British Empire into this war. The government is interested in this, so we need the evidence of this atrocities to get out, and do everything you can to help them. And then they split up, so there are at least 2 people in the resistance knowing about this, and as they are leaving, I think Lenka is being stopped by the German police there, and we don't know what will happen to her unless a place opens up on the wait list.
That works fine for me. That leaves the door open to either the Germans know or the Germans don't know, depending on what happens between now and then. Okay, folks, we've got 10 minutes to go. I'm going to suggest we pause there, roll titles. I won't ask for epilogues from the other 3 of you, because you'll just roll straight on next week. But I would like to have a quick, any stars or wishes, roses or thorns, take your pick. I thank you for engaging, because I thought you all kind of got stuck in. But anything you want to pick out in terms of what didn't work, what did work? Was there something that you would want to see next time that you didn't see this time? Any order?
I really liked the pace. I liked that a lot happened, and it really felt like the kind of genre of movie that this would be about, right? Like these cutting away these scenes of seeing how is this like espionage meetup happening and the tension. So I really enjoyed the pacing and the way we structured the scenes. Great job with that. I would say one thing that I'd be curious to see more of at some point would be some scenes with characters like interacting and expressing what's on their minds to each other.
Yeah, fair point. I think I took a deliberate sense this time to just get you bedded in. I think we'll see them interact over the next couple of sessions. Anybody else?
I would just second, I guess, what Walter said. I mean, yeah, I thought the pacing was great, and the way that you sort of managed the air team and the ground team, I thought was really good and really well balanced, and yeah, totally grokking the history and and the I think we've talked about this in the past, but it totally feels like it's right out of an Alistair MacLean novel. You know what I mean? It's like these are competent but not super heroic. You know what I mean? They're human. You know what I mean? And looking forward to, just as Walter said, a little bit more opportunity to kind of like engage and develop that develop these bonds. I guess that's probably the best noun, that I can think of.
Okay. Paul, Jasmine, anything?
No problem for me.
Yeah, I was happy to get to play in this session. I had I enjoyed it, and it's a cool genre, and I didn't get to punch enough Nazis, but still I did a part. Anyways, I think if there would be a criticism on the information you laid there, both times it was unclear how we would rendezvous with the other party in the village. We did not have like a point our characters would be meeting at. The church was something where we did the the Lord's Prayer thing that would only work in the church, and it happens that the setup was the church, but had our characters known that what this was the setup, we could have saved some time by our characters going into the church and then doing the rendezvous there, and we could have saved like 10 minutes, and we had a lot of spycraft within those 10 minutes, so it's not a bad thing, but it's a pattern I recognized, because it was also in the bar where we didn't know Gaspar, but there it made sense that he was making contact with us, but in the village it was both parties were player characters, and neither of us had a clear point of rendezvous.
Fair point. Thank you for that. Okay, well, thank you all. I'll stop the broadcast now, so say goodbye to the internet.